Aaron,
Hi, my daughter just came back from Israel,
welcome back.
but now
Okay,
she's got 3 more weeks, and then she goes back for an entire year of seminary.
Ezrat Hashem. Okay, let's do the Sicha here. Okay, we're going to be learning now the Sicha, the talk from the Rebbe that was Shabbos Parshas Reeh, like this week, Mevorchim Elul, which is blessing the month of Elul, which is like this week in the year Tafshin Yud Zayin, 1957. So Rebbe says like this, B'Lekutei Torah, in the Lekutei Torah of this week, which kind of this week and next week, because there's no Lekutei Torah next week. So it says, Divra Maskal Ani Ledodi V'Dodi Li, which has the mimer, which is I'm to my beloved and my beloved's to me, which is Rashi Teves, first letters of the words make up the name of the month, which is Elul, Ani Ledodi V'Dodi Li. Mivora, so there in the mimer, which is the famous mimer, which Be'ezus Hashem we will be learning on Sunday night. Shebe'elul Huzman Hisgalas Yud Gimel Mitzrachim. That Elul is the time, the month of Elul, which is the final month of the year, is getting ready for Rosh Hashanah for the new year, is a time of the revelation of the 13 attributes of mercy. V'afal pikei, nevertheless, hem yimayis. So there the Alter Rebbe asked the questions, but like we'll learn Sunday, that it's still weekdays. It's not considered a holiday. It's not a holiday. It's not like Shabbos and Yom Tov, which when there's great revelations, it's a holiday. It's Moedim L'Simcha, it's a special holiday. The month of El has the revelation of 13 attributes of mercy. Nevertheless, it's still considered Yemei Achol, days of the week. And there the Alter Rebbe also says that surely when they have the 13 attributes of mercy also revealed in Yom Kippur, the Yom Kippur is obviously different, much greater of a day than the month of El. So that's really a question that the Rebbe addresses in the Maimer, the Alter Rebbe addresses in the Maimer of Anila Dodi. Umavar, so there the Alter Rebbe explains in the Maimer, Achina Yuvan Api Mashal Lemelech, this is the famous example of the king in the field. Based on the example of a king, Shekoidem Bayi Li'ir, before the king goes out to the city, means on his way into the city, Yoitzin Likrasei Mekablim Panavasada. So he's making his way to the city. The people, his subjects, come out to the field to greet him. And in that scenario, where the king is in the field, so to say, not in his city, not in his palace, Rashayin Kol Misha, so everyone's allowed, whoever just wants to, Lahakbil Panav, to go greet the king. And the king's response to that person is not just that you have access, but the king responds to each person, and he accepts everyone with a good face, and he's showing a grace face, a joyful, a shining face to everyone, which these are all signs of encouragement, and this is the example of the month of El. Meaning to say, when the king is found in his palace, then you have to have an appointment. To go into the king's palace, you have to have an appointment, reshus, permission. Here the Rebbe is quoting from the Maimer. And also, who usually could get an appointment? Even if you tried, the regular person wouldn't get an appointment. Only specific people, which are considered the mufcharim, the chosen ones, and yechidei segula, the unique individuals. And you need many preparations to be allowed into to this appointment, even if you get it. You have to prepare yourself, etc. That's all in the palace. So when the king is in the palace, only the mufcharim, like the Rebbe says, only the chosen ones, yechidei segula, the unique ones, and it comes with major preparation. But however, when the king is in the field, Rashayim then is allowed, v'yachayim, and there's an ability, kulam, from anyone, doesn't make a difference who you are, as long as you're in the field. Lageshes alamelech, you have to go to the king, and you could greet the king, lahagish lebekashasayim, and not only that, not only could you say hello and greet, but you could actually plead your case, your quests to the king. You could give it to him while the king is in the field. He's accessible. V'dugmasai benimshal, and what is this as an example of? Shechodeshel. This is Chodeshel, and this the Alter Rebbe in Lekutei Torah, like the Rebbe starts off, answers the question: what does it mean that there's the light of the 13 attributes of mercy in the month of Elul? Nevertheless, it's still days of week, and you can't compare it to Yom Kippur, etc. Because that's the whole idea of Elul. There's the access. It's God is accessible, which is representing the 13 attributes of mercy, the kings in the field, and we have an opportunity. Everyone has an opportunity, no matter what, just to go greet the king and even ask the king your bakashas, your quests. So he says, this is the example. This is the famous example of king in the field. Elul mutar, that the days of Elul are uvdin nechal, the weekdays. Hashaychim l'sadeh, that's the idea of the field. What's the field? What's the connection to the field in the weekdays? Because in the weekdays we go out to the field to work the field. Shabbos we don't work the field. You're not home. Shabbos is and Yom Tov is the time you're home. What's beautiful? It's beautiful for a person when they have the opportunity, when they're not working, to take in everything, all your labor, to be able to take advantage of that, of the beauty you have in your home, and that's allowed because you work the whole week in the field. Not only are you not at home, you're not in the city, which is Ir Alekeinu, we're not in Yerushalayim, the city of God. The Kayal Oisis Atayr Vatfila that's referring to, in this case, not just the Jerusalem specifically, but the words of Torah and davening. You're out in the world. Shinikrayim Avonim. That's why they call the house, because the words of Torah, mitzvahs, and tefillah are stones that build homes. Shemehem nase batim, that you make homes. Umiribe abatim nase ir. And in many homes makes a city. That's the Ir Alekeinu. All the homes that make up a city from the words of davening and learning. But nevertheless, in the month of El, Nimtzayim B'Sad, we're out in the field. Which the field is also, the Rebbe says, again, this is also part of the second mimer of Anila Dodi, where this field is not only a place for work, it's also this place of Esav, the brother of Yaakov. Ish Sad, that says Esav is the man in the field. So the field, the person's vulnerable. Shesham Oiskim moved the Michal, and that's where the world of Esav is, which is weekday. You could be in such a situation where you don't have the ability, or you don't have the focus, that in all my ways, in all my ways, I know him, which includes even the ways of business. When a person's properly working in the weekdays, so then you're supposed to have the idea of in all your ways you know Hashem. And then if you have that focus while you're out in the city, so to say, out in the field, that called in all your ways you know Hashem, so you're building from the field, you're making it a city. Those become itself words of Torah and Tefillah. And so the reason why you're defined as a person who's now in the field, because had you had if you would have that in all your ways you know God, that itself creates a city around you, although you're doing the permissible. So the fact that you're found in the city, so you're connected to Esav, Isha Sada, Esav, the man in the field. So therefore, the Rebbe says, a person would think, if I'm not just in the field, he'd say, okay, I'm in the field, I'm out working. But had I been in the field in a proper manner, then my field would turn into a city. So the fact that I'm considered a person who's in the field, I'm connected more to Esav. Nevertheless, so nevertheless, notwithstanding the fact that you're now found in a space defined as the field of Esav, the king's not concerned and goes to meet you in that space. And that's defined by the 13 attributes of mercy. Where's the mercy component in here? That the God is in the field. Because if not for God's tremendous 13 attributes of mercy, based on which is beyond the midas adin, the judgment, the attribute of judgment, God wouldn't go to the field to meet you. He'd say, why haven't you made the field into a city? So now I'm standing with all this revelation, but it still doesn't change the fact that the place is a space, means the time and space is a time and space of week. It's not Yom Tov. Shabbos is Yom Tov, like when there's other revelations, which is a revelation where you're elevated out of the space of the field. Because you can't change the fact that, yes, so here we have two extremes. Where you are at is Sada and connected to Esav Isha Sada, because you haven't made the field into a bias, into a house. And nevertheless, the 13 attributes of mercy is that God is in the field to meet you, the king is in the field. So it doesn't make it Shabbos days or Yom Tov, therefore Elul is not a Yom Tov, because we're dealing with issues of why am I in the field in the first place. But nevertheless, the king is there to be with you in that journey. This is all the Rebbe is explaining the example that we're going to learn Sunday night in the Maimer of Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li, I'm to my beloved's to me, which is the month of El. At the end of the Maimer, at the end of the example that the Alter Rebbe gives in the Maimer, Moisef Rabbeinu Azakin, the Alter Rebbe adds, Ubelechti ha'ira him ha'ilchem achav. Here's a diak, this is a great diak from the Rebbe. That what happens? So there's two things that the Rebbe says in the example. The Alter Rebbe says in the example that the Rebbe in his Maimarim, in his discourses on the Rebbe's example, on the Alter Rebbe's example of Ani L'Dodi, the Rebbe puts out a lot, breaks down every single point of the example. So one of the points he points out is that the Alter Rebbe says, as the king goes through the field, greets everyone, listens to everyone, to their quests. So he continues his way into the city, which is the month of Tishrei. He goes into his palace. So the Alter Rebbe adds, and when the king goes into the city, because of their experience of greeting the king in the field, they're able to follow the king into the city. So here the Rebbe is going to ask on this part of the example, seemingly one could ask, what's the basis and why does the Alter Rebbe add this? That when the king continues and makes his way into the city, the people that greet him in the field follow him into the city. If the point of the example is that the Alter Rebbe is trying to explain how is it that there's the 13 attributes of mercy, which were taught by the words of Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li, we see a great, tremendous connection. I'm to my beloved, and my beloved's to me, which is Elul. And that's a sign of the revelation of 13 attributes of mercy. But nevertheless, there's still weekdays. We don't have a holiday called the month of Elul.
Can I ask you just a side thing? When the Rabbi Steinsaltz calls a book the 13 Petaled Rose, what is the explanation? Is that about the 13 attributes of mercy that he's referring?
I believe so. I mean, the 13 Petal Rose, I believe, is the Shar Yichud V'Amuna. I think that's his book on the second part of Tanya, which is the Shar Yichud V'Amuna, the gate of trust, of unification and faith. But I think it is connected to that. I can't comment 100% because I haven't read that sefer.
Yeah, I read it many years ago, and then it disappeared from my house. But I couldn't remember why it was that reference. It fascinated me.
I believe it is connected to the 13, because the Haroya B'Shoshana, we're going to learn in the Maimer, Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li, Haroya B'Shoshana, that the person who pastures by the Shoshana, by the rose. So Elul is the 13 attributes of mercy, so Haroya B'Shoshana, that's probably why he named it the 13 petal rose after the 13 attributes of mercy.
Right, thanks.
For the Choreni movement, seemingly isn't, the Rebbe says it doesn't understand. L'shem ma Moisev Rabbeinu Zaken Tevi said, why does the Alter Rebbe add that we follow the king into the city? To explain why Elul is weekdays, which is because we're still in the mundane space of the field. We haven't gotten out of the field of Esav. The point is that the king's in the field. That's why there's no Yom Tov called Elul. There's nothing to do with the city. The city is a separate part of the example. Why would the Alter Rebbe add that in? The idea is, when the Alter Rebbe adds these words, he's teaching us something. The Alter Rebbe is coming to tell us that what was the bottom line of all this? Why does the king go out to the field? Why are we in the field? And why does the king go out to the field to greet us? So we can follow him into the city. Mavada Maila. So the Rebbe says, besides for the point, the uniqueness on its own, that the king comes to the field to meet us in our space, and reveals himself to everyone. Although we're a person that's connected to Esav, the man of the field, nevertheless, we would think that we're lost. We don't have an opportunity to have a connection. Nevertheless, the king comes to see us. We can see him. We can speak to him. We can greet him. He shows us a shining face. But there's a greater point. Not just that the king should see us in our space, but that by the king meeting us and greeting us in our space, eventually that empowers and it strengthens us, that we ourselves should leave that space. We should no longer be a person of the field. When the king goes into the city, if we leave that space of the field and go into the city. Like you said before, it doesn't mean that you stop working. Because by turning your workspace, then you're in all your ways, including your business ways, you know God, so then you've turned your field into a city. V'tam the Rebbe says, what's the reason? Kivan shebiyos melech b'sadeh, because when the king's in the field, niskasher ish sadeh melech, there becomes a connection, kesher. A kesher is kashrus between the field person and the king. The person from the field is no longer the same person and doesn't want to be disconnected from the king, doesn't want to remain in the field. And therefore, wherever the king is going to go, he follows the king. So if the king isn't with him in his space of the field, he's with him there. As the king leaves the space of the field, he follows the king into the space of the city. The Rebbe says this is an example of Elul. This shining of the revelation of the 13 attributes of mercy in the month of Elul. The idea is not just that the king meets us in our space, God meets us in our space, but there has to be a pu'ula. The payelas is that now in our space of the field of the weekday we have the light of the 13 attributes of mercy. That wasn't the bottom line. The bottom line is not just the interaction and connection that's in your space as you are in the field. That's a level, but it's not the tachlis. It's not the bottom line. The bottom line is hatachlasi. You leave that space of being Isha Sad, the person in the field that's connected to Esav Isha Sad, the Esav is the person in the field. That you should no longer be a person in the field. You come into this to the city of the king, until the chamber of the king himself. So this is where the Rebbe really goes in over the years and explaining and elevating or revealing to us the depth of this example of the month of Elul. Vihine, the Rebbe explains, this idea that when the king goes into the city, the people of the field follows the king. When does that start? That starts in the Rosh Hashanah. But that's Rosh Hashanah. Now we're Elul, and Elul we're still in the field. So it's not that as soon as the king reveals himself, we right away leave the space. It's a process. But everything needs a preparation. HaShabbos, like we know Shabbos itself, that Erev Shabbos on a Friday is where the days before Shabbos is one prepares for Shabbos. The Rebbe says more than that. From the beginning of the week, not just Erev Shabbos. Starting from Sunday, like we know from Shamar and Hillel, starting from Sunday, we say today is the first day getting ready for Shabbos. Yom Rishon the Shabbos. Kivan, already Sunday we start to prepare for Shabbos. So to Yom Torah, as is explained in the Kutei Torah, that from the revelations that the Jewish people would experience and be engulfed in the temple over the Yom Tov period, Sukkot, primarily Sukkot, Pesach and Shavuos. The Alter Rebbe explains in the Kutei Torah that energy would stay with us from holiday to holiday. So we see how did we get prepared for the next Yom Tov from the previous Yom Tov. So what's the idea of the hachana? The Rebbe is talking about now the hachana, the preparation. How do we prepare ourselves? Because the month of Elul was still in the city, we're still in the field. How do we prepare ourselves? And there's the preparation for Elul itself. The Rebbe is now not discussing the preparation for Elul. The Rebbe is talking about the preparation for Rosh Hashanah. How do we prepare ourselves to follow the king on Rosh Hashanah? From leaving the field and going into the palace, or into to at least the city of the king. Is starting Chodesh Elul, the Rebbe says even before Elul, like I said, we start Tachana for Elul even before Elul. The Shabbos Mevorchim Elul, like this week, is the Shabbos that we bless the month of Elul. Sheminei Mevorchim Kol Yom, because the entire week is blessed from Shabbos. And that's why the Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh, we bless the Chodesh. V'hainu sheheichel mi Shabbos Mevorchim, starting from Shabbos Mevorchim, u'pratyas Yosef. Heichel mi Rosh Chodesh Elul, from the beginning of Elul, this year we're lucky, Rosh Chodesh Elul starts already on Sunday. Tzrichim lahaschil yiskoinin latzes me'asad v'leil chlir. Means you can't wait the entire Elul and the last moment grab your bags to run after the king on Rosh Hashanah into the palace. The Rebbe says from Shabbos and Mevorchim, specifically from Chodesh Elul, the focus has to be not just the experience of meeting the king in the field, but by meeting the king in the field, you're going to follow him into the city. Yes, and outwardly, and now as it seems, we're still in the field. We're in our field clothes, even maybe in our field mindset. Inside, Nekudas and Neshama at the core of the soul, Nirgish Kva, the person is starting to change and starting to feel. Shetzrichim Latis Masad, I don't want to remain in the field. It's a process, it'll take 30 days. But I don't want to remain in the field. I want to be the person, one of those people who follow the king into the city. The Rebbe says, when a person follows the king from the city to the city and into the house, and that only happens in Rosh Hashanah. And the Rebbe says, you're still in the field in Elul. But your core, the inner part of your soul, your sort of say your intuition, the depth of your soul is starting to feel already and knows that when the king leaves the field, I'm going to follow the king into the city. And this is why one of the things that we start in Rosh Chodesh Elul is we say chapter 27 in Tehillim to David, Hashem, God is my light. And what do we say to God in that verse? In chapter 27, one of the famous verses is Bakshapanai. We seek God's face. We no longer want to see God from behind. What does it mean? Bakshapanai, and God is seeking our face. Right? There's different explanations in the verse. God is seeking our face, so we should see God's face. But how does that start? And that's why we say it in chapter 27 from the beginning of El, is to awaken the inner core of the soul. We seek out God, the face of God. We no longer want to have a backwards relationship. And after the preparation that we have in the month of El, then that happens. In a revealed way, no longer in a concealed way. In Rosh Hashanah, then it becomes a revealed holiday. Not like the days of El, which are days of the week, because we're still in the mindset of the field. And when we complete the experience of going to the city, is at the end of the 10-day period on Yom Kippur. And the highest tefillah, the tefillah of Ne'ilah, when we close the gates. And that's when it really get revealed. In the Kavah Simcha, the joy we take from our avodah of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and Chag HaSukkos and the holiday of Sukkos, Ad Shmini Atzeres to the sea, so to say, the completion of Sukkos, which is Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah. That what happened on Shmini Atzeres? That was the time the Jewish people had a special holiday for themselves. The 7 days of Sukkot, they celebrated the 70 nations. On Shmini Atzeres, it's Par Echad, one cow, one ram for one nation. Yisrael u'malchul b'chudai. The Jewish people and the king are alone. That's one meal. 7 days of Sukkot, we're elevating the nations, the 70 nations, weakening the nations. That's where we go. The Par Echad gets smaller and smaller, transforming them, breaking the animal. But nevertheless, that's all the avodah of within the world. Comes Shmini Atzeres, it's Yisrael Malchul b'chudai. It's only about the Jewish people and the king. It's only for the Jewish people themselves and not for any foreigners. And this is one of the reasons why the Shabbos that we bless the month of El, or on the Chodesh El itself, depends on the layout of the week. Current Parshas Reeh. Now that Rebbe connects it to this week's parsha. Why do we read the parsha of this week, Parshas Reeh, which is Reeh Anochi Noisin Lifneichen? How does this week's parsha open up? Which the Rebbe says that's the idea of Elul, that Panecha Hashem Avakesh, Bakshu Panai, seek out my face. And that's why we open up this week's parsha with the verse Reeh Anochi Si Noisin Lifneichen, also Panim, face to face. Why? Why did we read Parshas Reeh on Shabbos Mevorchim or Rosh Chodesh Elul? Is because Kivan Shahavoided the Chodesh Elul Hu Bakshu Panai. The whole idea of Elul is to start seeking out Hashem's face. That should culminate in us leaving the city, the field, going to the city, following the king till Yom Kippur, Simchas Torah, Sukkot, and Shmini Atzeres. We say Lifneichem, Nasati Lifneichem, before you. L'lachem Pnimius, that's also from the word internally. Shizui Hanesin Iskayach, because by reading Parshas Reeh, it empowers us. I'll avoid the bakshapani to start the avodah. Everything starts from Torah. And so on Shabbos Mevorchim or Shabbos Chodesh Elul, when we read starts the avodah that inwardly, at least in Bipnimius, like we said, the inner core of the soul starts to transform from a person of the field to be bakshapane, to seek the face of God, which is relationship. That's expressed when we follow the king into the palace, into the city. And the Torah continues that what is God showing us? Brachol klal. You have a choice between blessing and curse. Shem beis hakavim, within that itself means there's the two lines of the mitzvos of sur meira v'asei tov. Klala is, what's the idea of klala? Why is God showing us the curse? To know what to avoid, which is sur meira, avoid negative. Brachas v'asei tov, do the positive, which is mitzvos asay, the positive commandments, and mitzvos leis asay, the prohibitions. Beis hakavim shebehem nechlekes, klalas avoided the kima mitzvos. That's the basics of the mitzvos. We have the 248 positive commandments and the 365 prohibitions. That God tells us, see, you can see it in front of you. Bracha v'klali, you're going to see the blessings and the curse. Sha'avoid base kavim, that are avoid in both sides, in being proactive positively and restraining ourselves in the prohibitions. Shricham liyas lefnechem, that you have to be bipnimius. That has to be before you on a bipnimius hanefesh, in the inner core of your soul. It's not only to say you shouldn't be a mechanical Jew, going through the motions, which is what it means. Mitzvahs anashim ulamada means people who are just accustomed to doing things. The Rebbe says, when it says anochi noisen lifnechem, what's lifnechem mean? Not just that you shouldn't be mechanical, but you should even elevate outside of a service to God that's based on reason. Tam v'das. Tam v'das means reason. That it makes sense for me to serve God. Ki tam v'das einin pnimius. When the basis of your service is reason, so that's not internal. That's not the internal of the soul. The internal of the soul is not that the external is lacking reason, and the internal of the soul has reason. That's not the definition of the internal of the soul. Because the essence of the soul is beyond reason. It's an unconditional connection to Hashem. That's what it means, bakshapane, seek my face. Have a pnimis, have an internal relationship with God. And where does the person get the ability to reveal or to start the process of revealing within themselves the pnimius, the panecha, that what's really inside you. The connection that's beyond even reason is anochi noisen lifnechem. God uses the word anochi. I myself, which is the same term God uses when he opens up the Ten Commandments. Anochi koyal, and what is the definition of anochi, as Chassidus explains? And the definition of anochi is, when God speaks in the term of anochi, I, it's koyal atzmusa yisbarach. It's not any manifestation, it's the essence of God. But atzmusa yisbarach omer, the essence of God tells a Jew.
Why in this portion is there also unusually the ani is there? Not just Anochi, but ani is in this parsha. Why is that?
Because in Revelations there's different levels, but the opening, the way that parsha starts, like the Ten Commandments starts, is to let you know that although there will be a process.
Yeah, I mean, I read a book it's called the Anochi Project. It's by a man that I met at the Chabad of Palm Springs. It's from LA.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was one of the editors in my book. He did the Anochi Project, and it talks all about Anochi. But in this parsha, unusually we have the word ani for God.
It's a good question, but we're talking about here the opening statement of Anochi Nosein Lefnechem, the idea of Lefnechem, to get in touch with your pnimius, to get in touch with your inner core of your soul. So he says, Anochi Nosein Hinini, it says, Atzmus Yisbarach Omer, the essence of God says to every Jew in the beginning of the month of El. Anochi Nosein Hinini Nosein is Atzmi. That the Rebbe says not just that that the Anochi is empowering you, but the Anochi is given to you. The essence is given to you. Anochi noisen, hinini noisen, it's atzmi. I'm giving myself. Ich gib sich avek, the Rebbe says in Yiddish. I'm giving my essence to you. Lifnechem, to your inner core. Shu inin iskashus ha'atzmus im etzem haneshama. Which means this is the beginning of the connection. That's what the Rebbe says. That once you connect to the king, you no longer want to be a person of the field. And if the king goes inside to the city, you go follow the king to the city. because it starts a hiskash atzmis, an essential connection, imetzim and Hashem with the core of the soul. And this is how the beginning of the core of the person, of the Jew, starts to connect with the essence of God. And therefore the inner core of the soul starts to feel. Like I said, you know for certain that wherever the king is going to go, I have to be with the king. If the king no longer is in the field, I'm no longer in the field either. Because you're connected to the essence of the king. And the king said, I'm giving you my essence. Again, this is the idea we spoke about many times, of why the pasuk uses the word not shomeya, to listen, but to see. We have to elevate ourselves to the level of visual versus hearing. And the Rebbe doesn't explain. In riyahu, the idea of to see something is defined. That brings a person, his amtus is from the word emes, which in this case means certainty, to the highest level of certainty. Why? Because you saw it. That's why that's the halacha. Why ein eid nasadayin? Why can't a witness become a judge? Because you're never going to be partial. You saw, if you see someone commit murder, you can't judge that person because you're never going to find the person innocent. It's not possible for you to see anything else. You saw it. We know there's a difference between when you hear something, that's a judge has to hear testimony, or the riyah to see something. No, so you can't compare listening to see. If you listen properly and pay attention to what you're being told, you'll also have a level of certainty of emes. It only reaches the external of the soul, which is based on reason, based on what you've heard. And if someone's going to ask a question on what you've heard, question the certainty that's based on listening. It's weak. You no longer have the certainty because the question could derail that certainty. Right? You could hear testimony from one witness and mamish believe it, because when you have a case of witnesses, it's not that there's false witnesses, you believe it. Then someone brings up a point that could weaken what you've decided or what you felt is true to the opposite. Now you have I don't know anymore. But when you see something, no matter what someone tells you, I saw it. No matter who someone says, for instance, you see someone do something spectacular, jump very high, do something amazing, lift something very heavy. So people could tell you 100 reasons why it doesn't make sense. You're not going to be derailed. You can say, I hear your questions, I see what you're saying, but it's not going to change the fact, I saw it. Yashir, the person is going to answer, I saw the person do it, I saw this happen. Because that truth, that certainty reaches the essence of the soul. There's nothing that could derail the person. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu says, hey, see this certainty. And then at the essence of the soul, there's no place of questions. When the essence of the soul is revealed, the essence of the soul has that certainty. Kushis v'tirutzim, people have questions and answers, yes, no. Taif simakim they'll only have a place. B'chitzaynis nefesh, in the external of the soul. V'chein b'inyin seichel. He's amtusasa hirak aidei shmiya shmegais b'chitzaynis nefesh. Therefore, because when it comes to logical things, his truth is only as long as what he hears, which only affects this external of the soul. And therefore, if someone's going to ask something, because it's based on logic and what you heard and what you understand, so someone could ask a question that's going to derail the certainty. And if someone's going to answer the question, so then it's going to have its strength again. But when you see something that reaches the internal of the soul, not the external of the soul, there's no quite place for questions. That's one of the reasons why in Kabbalah and Chassidus, it's not like the Talmud that has questions. A question is not going to weaken. You hear the question. You don't have to argue with the question. But it's still not going to weaken the certainty. And if someone answers that question, is not going to add anything. If one person says the person couldn't have jumped so high, and someone explains how, special sneakers, I don't know, whatever, this person can jump so high, it doesn't change. You didn't get more certain less certain because of the question, or more certain because of the answer. And this is what Moshe wants from us, the beginning of Elul. God says, see, that I myself have been given to you. And within that is the avodah, bracha, and klala, which is the positive and the negative commandments. When a person goes out on the journey of being the avoda, of being active in the positive commandments, and restraining oneself in the prohibitions, the ones at least that affect you. It has to be certain. That affects and is connected to the essence of your soul. And like everything in a Jew's life, where's the power of the person to reveal that certainty? The essence of the soul is from Torah itself. Because what happened in Matan Torah was in a way, like the Rambam says, we saw it. It's not a foreign thing. We saw God, Moshe, come down and give us the 10 Commandments via the voice of God. The Rambam says clearly, the reason why we believe in Moshe and we believe in the Torah is not because of a miracle. Because if it's based on a miracle, that's shmiyah, that's listening. And every Jew is at Mount Sinai. They saw God give the Torah. They saw the connection. We all saw the connection. By days then is emes ha'inyan, therefore it has a certainty of re'iyah. The Torah mitzvah says the kol bnei Yisrael p'nimiyusam, and that affected that essentially, at the core, every single person has a certainty in God and Torah mitzvahs. And the question is if you have to reveal it or not. And comes the month of El, that has to be revealed to the fact that when it comes the month of Tishrei, of Rosh Hashanah, it's obvious. If the king leaves the field, we follow the king into the city. The Rebbe said, at the core of a Yid, it's clear by every single Jew. Wherever the king goes, it's not even a question. If the king is going someplace else, I go with the king. If the king leaves the field, I leave the field with the king. That's in the inner core. The Rebbe says everyone has that. That started from Matan Torah. The only question is you have to reveal and awaken this essential core. That's what Elul is. Elul is not to give you something, but to reveal something that already has. You have the ability to seek my face. The pnimius, the vakesh, to seek, lechapesh, another language of seeking. As a pnimius, find your inner pnimius. The Rebbe says, the Rebbe quotes the Rashi, a beautiful mimer of El, 1920, that the heart is talking to the person. The heart is the essence of the soul. It says, find your pnimius. Find your inner core. You have it already. And that the month of Elul helps us. It becomes Rosh Hashanah. This is what Rosh Hashanah is about. Not just about asking God for the things that we need, which is also very important, and we do that. But the idea of Rosh Hashanah is to start to reveal our pnimius, our inner core. Like it says, then from this, Rosh Hashanah is called the head of the year, not the beginning of the year. It gives us an ability to take this energy throughout the year. Shikima Torah mitzvahs, that going forward, our fulfillment of the Torah mitzvahs. We shouldn't be people that are mechanical, or that's what we've learned, that's what we've been educated. We don't know anything else. To us, Shabbos is Sholten and Kugel, or even Shabbos is going to Shul, but it's just mechanical. That's not enough. It's not enough even if you're a Jew based on reason. The inner core of your soul has to be revealed. And not just on Rosh Hashanah, but that Rosh Hashanah should be the beginning for the entire year. This is also the vessel for a person. That God should bring down a good, sweet year, everything that we need, the gashmius in our material needs, the in our spiritual needs. We have a few more minutes. We'll just go further into the Farbrengen. After that, that was the opening talk of the Rebbe that year, 1957. Very powerful Farbrengen. And then the Rebbe said to sing the Maimer Nigun, and he said a Maimer on this topic of Re'eh Nechenaisin Lefnecha. Oidus Ha'inyan, on the idea of we're going to go a few more minutes as far as we get until the 1:45. Oidus Ha'inyan Re'eh Noichi. This idea that you should see that I'm Anoichi. Nemer Haloshin Noisin. What does it say? Re'eh Noichi Noisin. I'm giving. To call HaNoisen, God is giving us the ability to see these things. And in Kol HaNoisen, we know that when someone gives something, the rule is, Ba'ayin Yafahu Noisen, has to give it with a good eye. You don't give something begrudgingly. You're forced to. Okay, I'm going to do it. When you give tzedakah especially, you have to give it Ba'ayin Yafahu Noisen. You have to give it with a good eye. Ba'ayin Shnoisen is calling Yonim, and God gives us everything. Pratis Yais Rebbe says he's more explains. Binyan Ariya Gufa Yesh Beis Madregas. There's two ways to see things. Now the Rebbe is going into the details of seeing. You see things with the eye. And then there's habata shmitzad etzem shlai ayin. There's what he calls re'iyah through the eye, and there's a habata, a steer, so to say, that's not via the eye. Like it says, im yoitzer ayin halo yabit. If I create an eye, then I could be habata. I could steer. I could look. Shepirish halo yabit ba'atzmai shlo yadei ayin. That means because I have an eye, or im yoitzer ayin, then I'm going to have even a higher level of habata, which is a higher level of seeing. Let's see if we could get a little explanation what that means. The Rebbe says, that God doesn't just give us the seeing, the visual of the eye, but even the level of habata. What does this mean? In Spiral Il Sifei, we said before that what does it mean to see something versus to hear something? Which is included also when you see something through your eyes. The Gavi Shmiya versus hearing. That gives a person his amtus. Again, his amtus from the word emes means certainty, truthfulness. Like I said before, a witness cannot become a judge. One of the reasons why a witness cannot become a judge. The person has to pay attention. So habata means not just to see. We see a lot of things. The difference between seeing and habata is that habata is to understand what you're seeing. You're paying attention. We see a lot of things. We have passing things, and we ignore them. We don't internalize them. Habata is to concentrate on what you're seeing. Internalize what you're seeing. So habata is a deeper level of seeing. So one of the reasons is that when a person is supposed to habata, is supposed to pay attention to a situation, to be able to have a shkulim. You could listen to one opinion, another opinion, and then you could decide as a judge what's the ruling. There's chus v'lechayiv. You think there's a positive. Either the person's worthy or guilty. Because you saw it, you're not going to find the merit. Like I said before, if you see someone commit a crime, there's nothing. It's going to be very hard for you to find a justification for the crime because you saw the crime. When the judge hears from witnesses who saw, although the witnesses are giving over what they saw, we know that Torah says that just a person can't decide something based on their mind. You need witnesses, and witnesses give a greater certainty than your logic does. Shari Asaga, based on just contemplation or just rational. Hikamaishmi is also like listening. The Torah says that if two witnesses, kosher witnesses, testify about something, they establish something, which is beyond logic. Nevertheless, because the judge himself didn't see it, but he's being told what others saw. He can still find a way to find the person innocent. If the judge himself sees it, he'll never find a merit for that person. That's why the law is a judge can't become a witness can't become a judge. In that situation. That when someone sees something, it's more certain than even what a witness says. Because from a witness, you could listen, although they've seen it, and still find merit. But if you yourself see it, you can't. You're disqualified as a judge. But the Rebbe says in seeing itself, there's two levels. Seeing something via something else. The ayin gashmi, which is the physical eye. The physical eye doesn't see it. It could sometimes see something but kind of block what it's seeing. That's where the system is. A person sees something through the eyes. One of the five senses. That's how things get passed to the brain. One of them is vision. Even if you see something with the eye of your head, what's called the ayin chachma, it's still a chachma seeing it. Your mind seeing it. But when you say halo yabit, habata means to see something raw, not via the eye, so to say. That your inner soul sees something. You're sensitive to what you're seeing. There's a difference. Many people see things all the time. People could see 5 people, 100 people could see the same beggar collecting, unfortunately, money. They see it. They don't pay attention. Doesn't go inside. There's the blockage of the eye of the mind. And this habata to properly pay attention to what's happening around you. So the Rebbe says, the Rebbe says, right, we're going to have to stop here, ladies and gentlemen, because I see this is going longer. It's a nice topic. Actually, I'm going to just drag this until the end of this statement because it's important. The Rebbe is like this. The Rebbe says, what's the proof? Because the rule is that we say that a judge, a witness cannot become a judge, is only about capital punishment. But in money issues, if you see someone give a loan, etc., then you could judge the case. From this we see, a person could see something, but it's not going to affect your inner soul. When a person sees a horrible act of murder, capital punishment issues, it shakes you. So it gives you a certainty. But you could see someone give a transaction, and maybe I saw the transaction, I don't know what the details were. I don't know what they agreed on, really. Because when you see something that's really affected to you, so then it affects your inner core. Then when you see it, it disqualifies you. But when it comes to money issues, you could be a judge, even if you saw the transaction. What's the point? How is that possible? It didn't affect you. You saw it, but it didn't affect you to give you certainty that you won't be able to judge the case properly. But only when you see things and pay attention deeply, like in a capital case. It's not through an intermediary. It affects your core, and therefore the certainty is certain, and you can no longer be a judge. And this is what God is telling the person. If God is giving us the ability to have visual, to have certainty, He gives us the full ability. And He gives us in a good eye. God doesn't just give us the first level of seeing something, like the seeing through the eye, but He gives us the ability to really internalize what we're seeing. What does this mean? How does this express itself? In our service of God, that we should no longer be mechanical people. No longer be people that are based on service of logic. It shouldn't be something that's foreign to us. You're seeing something that's nothing to do with me. Everyone turns their face. There was a story that someone was trying to get back into Eretz Yisrael from Egypt. So she said that she was trying to get back inside, and she was arrested by the border police for something that she didn't do anything wrong. And she said she called out to everyone. Everyone saw her, and they turned their faces. Everyone was just trying to get into Eretz Yisrael through Eilat. They didn't want to pay attention to her situation. So that's, you see something, but you're not paying attention to it. It's zor, it's foreign to you. When you see something, you should internalize it. It should affect you. How do we have the ability to be so sensitive to spirituality, to internalize what we see? When God says, God, when He says something, it becomes, this is the way it is. Hashem becomes your strength. It doesn't become something foreign to you. Something close to you. It's not just close to you, it's you yourself. Like it says in Tanya that a neshama is a chelik al mal mamish. This means God gives us before us, that He gives the ability to see something, to become one with something. And Mr. Hashem should be taka, all these great lessons we learned. This very, very powerful for bringing. Internalize the taka with a good Shabbos and a good Chodesh. Everyone, thank you for joining. Laila Tov.
Good Shabbos. Thank you, Rabbi.